let's dive right in. So we are so excited to have Tami on our podcast today. Thank you for joining us, Tami.
Thank
And
you.
first, we'd like to start out with if you want to just give us a little bit of background about yourself and who you are.
Well, I'm Tami Hackbarth. I'm a native Californian, and my job right now is as a women's advocate. Basically, I help women reclaim their self-care so that they can have the energy so they can create the world they want to live in.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking a lot about, it's like, what do I really do in the world? I want people to have equity in their home and also equity in the world. And it
Right.
could be time equity, it could be equity in terms of the resources and the time that are spent on our hobbies. It
Mhm.
can be a pay equity, all equity all
Yeah.
over the world for
Equal.
everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, but not equal, actually. Equity is people get what they need
Yes.
versus 50-50.
Very
Although there
good point.
is, I will say right from the start, I am a fair play facilitator. And for those of you that don't know about fair play, it's a book and it's written by a woman named Eve Rodsky. And it's all about rebalancing domestic labor at home, which is another way of saying most of us, when we couple up with somebody, we usually have some sort of relatively equal distribution of who does what in the house, who
Sure.
pays for what in the house.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But man, when you bring kids into that equation, suddenly the balance goes like this.
Mhm.
And the female partner's like, wait, what happened to somebody? What happened to my partner? Where did
So
they
true.
go?
Yeah.
And suddenly they find themselves very responsible for childcare and everything with having to do with the house and the in-laws and the hobbies for the kids, all
Mhm.
of that.
Mhm.
And so I help families like collect everybody back to the table to be like, okay, how can everybody get what they need?
Yeah.
So it's fair. So we can all be people, because most people, after they have kids, they fall into the role of partner, parent, professional. So we
Mhm.
spend all of our time parenting, being part of a couple, and working.
Yeah. It
But the
doesn't
most
leave a lot of
important,
time for fun, right?
it doesn't leave a lot of time to be a person,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? And so one of the things I do in my work is advocate for everyone to be the most interesting version of themselves. It's like, who were you before
Yes.
you became
Yeah.
a parent, a partner, and a professional?
Yes. Where'd that person go?
Yeah, where did that person go and how can we reclaim her?
Mhm.
So that's what I do professionally. And then in my spare time, y'all, a couple of years ago, I was like, do I have hobbies? And my husband started laughing and they're like, ma'am, of course you have hobbies, but I didn't consider the things that I like to do
Yeah.
hobbies.
Yeah.
I'm an absolutely voracious reader.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Turns out that's a hobby.
Yes, it is.
Turns out enjoying live music is a
Yeah.
hobby. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, you things I naturally gravitate towards are actually hobbies.
Yeah.
Did I look it up as qualifying? I was like, are these hobbies? And the
Yes.
internet said
You're trying
yes.
to validate your interests. Why?
So we have actually coined this term as called hidden hobbies
Mhm.
because we have also discovered that exact same thing about
Yes.
ourselves, that we were already doing all these things and feeling like we didn't have anything for ourselves when we really did.
Yes.
That's just
Right.
yes.
But it's also not saying, oh, I have this thing that I'm going to do in the margins between
Right.
pickups and bedtime and
Mhm.
after everybody goes to bed. I just came back from a weekend conference in Los Angeles where I left at 5 a.m. on Saturday. By noon, I literally was dancing shoulder to shoulder with Reese
Oh
Witherspoon.
my gosh. Wow.
I did not talk to my
Incredible.
family for
That's amazing.
36
Yeah.
hours.
Wow.
And I didn't grocery shop before I left. I basically was like, here's my flight information. Every time I got into a lift, I was like, this is my driver. If I turn up missing,
Yes.
this is the
Very
last
smart.
person that saw me, and I'll see you when I get home. And my husband was like, bye.
That's
And so
amazing.
now this weekend, he's going to do, I don't know what he's going to do, but I just know he's not going to be home. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, I do. He's going to the Bay Area. He's going to do some hiking. He's going to see some friends.
Awesome.
But it's this idea that when I take time for myself,
Mhm.
we've been parents for almost like 13 years.
Mhm.
And from the very start, I was like, I married a grown up. I am not more qualified to take care of this baby than you are.
Yeah.
Great
Because
point.
we are both
Yep.
absolute novices.
Mhm.
So I'm going to get out of your hair while you figure it out.
Mhm.
I'm going to go do some stuff over here. And then you can have your time to do stuff.
Mhm.
And some people have been like, I can't believe that your husband's in 3 bands. I can't believe he does this and that. And I'm like, I married an interesting, cool dude.
Yeah.
He's a teacher by day and
Rock
a
star by
musician. Like he plays in bands. He's got a
Yeah.
record label. I married an interesting dude.
Yeah.
I want him to continue to be interesting.
Yeah.
He
Right.
married an interesting person.
Mhm.
He wants me to continue to be interesting.
It's
And so some
really
other things that I thought of hobbies that I was like, oh shoot, I think I hadn't thought of these as hobbies. And that is, I love going to women's conferences
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
because, right,
Yes.
you get to hang out with other women.
Mhm.
You usually get to stay in a fancy hotel. They feed you.
Love to do
There's no kids and husbands there. So you're like, this is fun.
Yeah.
So you sleep through the night, you wear cute clothes, you learn stuff.
Mhm.
Pretty great.
That
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
It
I would
really
like
does
to do.
sound
I would like to go.
I know,
Right,
right? That's my hobby.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I'm starting to be like, maybe I should do more of these, not
Yeah.
less.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
And then I used to work in politics. I had a whole career in politics, but now it's one of my hobbies.
That's
And it's funny because, and I'm right now just wearing my Harris for President t-shirt.
Mhm.
And some people are like, well, how do you consider that a hobby? It's like, well, nobody's paying me
Yeah.
to teach people about democracy or voting or
Yeah.
candidates or how to be an activist. In fact, I have a program called Civics and Self-Care. Where I'm like, I'll teach you. Like, if
I
you're
like that.
interested in this stuff,
Yeah.
come and join me. Yes, there's also a book club component. Yes, we're going to have meetings. We're going to cheer each other on. And I was like, girl, I think that's also a hobby.
Definitely.
Yes,
I think,
absolutely.
I mean, a hobby is anything that brings you joy
Yep.
and you're interested in, right?
Yep.
It says nothing, there's
Absolutely.
no other
It
need,
doesn't
like,
need anything more
Yeah.
than that. And I think that sometimes when you're starting to like try to, because like even you talked about, like when you were looking at things that you were interested in, you had to validate yourself through
Mhm.
going through Google. I did the same exact thing, Tammy.
Right? You're like, I'm not bird watching. I'm not collecting art. Because you're like,
not knitting or, yeah.
right, I don't play golf. I'm not an Iron
Yeah.
Man triathlete. I was like, what is that thing called? It's like, I don't have this. There's no
There's
medal at the
right.
end.
Yep.
There's
No
an
one-
idea of what a hobby
Yes.
definition might look like, but when you really break it down, it really is just comes down to, does it bring you joy? Are you feeling fulfilled for it? It doesn't have to be like a
I
traditional.
know we are like working on retraining our brains to realize that you do not have to have a goal or achieve anything when
Mhm.
you do something you love.
Yep.
And that is such a mind shift from where
It is. And you don't
we're
have to
conditioned.
monetize it.
Right.
And you don't have to justify it.
Right.
Nope.
Right. But one thing that does actually increase the joy of your hobbies is when you share them with other people.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Very
It's
much
like,
agree with that.
Yes.
right. And so I also was like, oh, but so many of my hobbies are individual things,
Yeah.
like reading.
Mhm.
But there's the difference between reading for yourself and then reading for your book club.
Yeah.
Is very different.
Yeah, or
It
talking,
is.
or just having things to talk about with other people.
Mhm.
You know, any
Absolutely.
common ground.
It's a great way to
We
make
found
friends as
that
adults.
just dabbling in hobbies, like it's so nice to just know a little bit about something and then you can talk to that person. Somebody, if you come across somebody who I recently tried to play the guitar, it's not for me, but at least now I know a little bit about it to talk to somebody about it, right? So it's
Great way to make
yeah.
new friends.
Yep.
Exactly. And it's also a way to claim your time because not to be morbid, but we don't know how much time we have on earth.
Yeah.
So what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
Great
That's a great
points.
point. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right? It's like we need to be like, hey, I know I have little kids or I have big kids that feel like little kids, aka teenagers, where you're
Mhm.
like, wow, you're like a toddler with a really big vocabulary sometimes. Like I don't want to only be known as my kid's mom
Mhm.
Yes.
or my spouse's wife
Yes.
or by my title.
Yes.
One of the things I have my clients do, so in the fair play, it's a game. There's cards, right? There's cards. So it's basically it's a communication system, right? So you get together with your family and you talk through, there's 100 cards. You talk through, so this one's charity, community service, and good deeds.
Mhm.
So what you do is you CPE it. Conception is the C. You talk about like what does charity, community service, and good deeds mean in our family?
Mm.
You ask your partner, you're like, tell me about this, about when you were growing up. And then you tell them, and your kids are like, wait, things happened before we were alive?
So true.
Wait, your parents, your parents or my grandparents, it blows your kid's mind.
Yeah.
Right. But then you decide, is this important to us as a family? If it is, then you talk about, okay, well, how are we going to plan this into our lives? And then you execute it. But here's the thing, in the Fair Play game, self-care is a card. So that means everybody in your family practices self-care as a given.
Yeah.
Yes.
Adult friendships, that's not your hobby. Hanging out with your friends, talking about your favorite TV show, that's not your hobby. That's just you having friends and being a grown-up outside your role, a parent, professional, and partner. And then the other part is this, it's called unicorn space. And the reason it's called unicorn space is if I was to say, okay, if you could have 3 to 5 hours every week in one chunk, what would you do with your time? And you cannot do anything to do with your kids.
Okay.
You cannot do anything to do with your self-care. You cannot do anything. You can't be hanging out with your friends. There's no yoga class. There's no laundry folding. There's nothing to do with that. What would you do? Wow. And you said it beautifully when you said, I took guitar lessons because, I mean, probably your listeners on this podcast would be like, yes, you did. That's an excellent hobby. But if I talked about that on my show, people might be like, who has time? Who has money? Who's doing that?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, the reason it's called unicorn space is people are like, where will I be finding these 3 to 5 hours?
Right.
And how you find is you negotiate with your partner and you say, would you like 3 to 5 hours for your hobby?
That's a great tip. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will take care of dinner, bedtime, and they get the time and resources.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
You're not texting them to say, where's the mustard?
What a great tactic.
Did you fill in the form?
Such a great tactic.
Right. And then conversely, you also get 3 to 5 hours where they're not disturbing you, because maybe you're taking up long distance swimming. Because let's be real, no one is going to be answering texts when they're in the pool. Right? If you're taking piano lessons or guitar lessons, your texting fingers are busy.
Yes.
Y'all can, if you don't know where the mustard is, they have it at Target and you can go buy some.
Yes.
Take the kids. It's a hoot going to the Target with the kids, right?
Do not disturb.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Do not disturb. And it's like, but it's that idea that if you claim 3 to 5 hours a week to yourself, you could write a book.
Yeah.
For no other reason than you just have stories in your head.
You had the space, you had the time.
Right? You have the space and you have the time. And no one, it's like you have this giant do not disturb bubble.
Love that.
Because here's the thing. If say you want to do something that requires you to like kind of get in the zone, have thinking space, no one can touch you or interrupt you. Like you could do big thinking work.
Definitely.
Like you could write the great American novel.
Yes. I think that's something that we both struggle with, and that's what we're trying to find is exactly what you're talking about. And through this podcast, of course, it has become a part of that.
Yes.
But finding that creativity again, that is something that I'm looking for. And I think you are too, just because we both, like many women, have spent our whole adult lives just becoming wife, mother, professionals, you know,
like high-achieving professional, not even just like, I just want to be decent at a job. Like I've got to be really like amazing at my job and like really working hard at that. And I agree with you. Like, I think like prior to this podcast, if somebody would have asked me about anything creative, I would have literally laughed in their face. Like I am not a creative person.
Right.
But
it's not true, right?
No, it is right. Because, and then I love that you brought that up, because so many of us, when you're asked about your hobbies, you're asked about your creativity, you're just like, what? That's what everybody does.
Right.
Because we're surrounded by moms who are doing all of these things without stopping to go, I just did a big thing. Yeah. I would like everyone to clap. I put on a harvest festival all by myself.
Yeah.
Everybody clap. And by the way, volunteering at school, not unicorn space.
No.
It's not a hobby.
Yeah.
Right?
Other people,
so,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny. So working with my clients, I have a year-long program called Deferred Maintenance because it's all about self-care for people. It's for people who put self-care off. And I'm like, girl, I got you. But one of the things that we talk about is unicorn space, and it's one of the early modules. And so I have 2 questions I ask my clients, and they all pause and then they laugh. And then they go, oh my God, I'm really going to have to think about that. And the questions are, if you're going to write your obituary right now, and you cannot mention your role at work, your role in your family, and your role as a spouse, what are people going to talk about?
And it hits you.
It does.
I leaned in when you were talking about that. I was like, oh man.
Well, it's a good thing you guys started the podcast.
Definitely.
Because guess what? That's what people are going to talk about. So it's this idea is like, what do you want to be known for? And then the other thing I have people do that always cracks them up, because almost all of my clients are married, is I'm like, okay, if you were going to write your dating profile, because we're not dating, although we're not dating. But if you were going to write your dating profile and you were going to attract and equally repel people, so in other words, you're going to put your like the turned up to 11 version of yourself out on the internet to say, who wants to date this queen? Right?
Yeah.
What would you say? Clearly, you would not be talking about your kids and your job and your spouse, not selling points on your dating profile.
Interesting.
Right? So it's this idea. Also, if we go to a dinner party or a conference and I sit down next to you, what are you going to say that I'm going to go, damn, she is so interesting?
Yeah, I've always struggled with that, like the elevator speech, or like, you know,
like your elevator pitch. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
I think we talked about how, like, in the early stages of this, we were like, when we go to meet new people, like trying to make new friends, the only thing that we had to identify to lead with was a mom is my business and I'm married. And well, nobody wants to be friends with me like, because I'm boring.
Right.
Well, but everybody has a stable of mom friends that have jobs and spouses. But it's like, but what makes you you?
Yes, exactly. And I think when I first started this podcast, I just don't think I knew who Tamra really was. You know, I think I had an idea of who she used to be. I had an idea of what I kind of wanted her to be at that point in time. But I'll tell you, even since we started this podcast, I don't think I'm the same Tamara.
Right.
I don't think I'm the Tamara that I thought I needed to be. I think I'm becoming a version of Tamara that I never expected. And I'm like, thrilled to be awesome. Like, I'm getting excited for myself. And I don't know that I had that kind of excitement for myself
for sure
prior to this. And so I want others to feel that. I want to feel that. Like I just feel like keep putting that message out there. And I think that's what you're doing with your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and it is interesting because I know that so many people, when they become, especially when they become parents, it's like you've gone into the cocoon, and we know what happens in the cocoon. Death and destruction. It's like you start with something solid, and it then is like it's gone. Right. But that is like the metamorphosis from it's the before and after of becoming a parent. But that, I mean, what a better time to be like, okay, so I just did this big metamorphosis. I am now this new identity. It's like I'm a mom and I'm a mom and because also I don't know, I used to be a teacher also, so I have this weird background in public service, but dealing with like grown-ups and policy, and then dealing with little kids and policy. And I don't know what experience you have hanging out with big groups of kids, but my experience is they do what we do, they do not do what we say. And so if you would not look at your little child that lives in your house right this second and Freaky Friday and them become you, everybody just had this very long, like, oh my God, pause. If you would not have your child take over your life as it is right now, if that thought is making you sweaty under your armpits like a bad job interview, it's time to make some changes. Because our kids are terrible at paving new pathways,
Mm-hmm.
just like we are. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's human nature. We all learn from our folks. So become the person, live the life that you want your kid to be like. I can't wait to be her.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? Like being a grown-up is amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're so right. You're so right. I mean, I saw that even in my youngest kid. Like, I feel like I in the beginning, I thought I needed to make sure I said the word hobby a lot in order just to put the word in our vocabulary with our family in order to drive home the importance of it. But what I ended up doing is just annoying out of her because she was like, I get it, Mom, it's a hobby. Can you stop? But then, even just recently, like she was observing me taking time to do a hobby and she was like, can I try that? And that seemed to be way more effective at getting her to branch out than me just being like hobby, hobby, hobby. Right. So I feel like absolutely to that point.
Yeah. It's funny how it's like we wish that we could teach our kids the lessons that we've already learned.
Yeah.
But by speaking it into existence, but it's like, oh, you mean I just have to live it and then they will absorb it. No pressure, everyone.
Right.
No pressure. But if you want your kids to like really dive into this life outside of their roles, we have to demonstrate that every day.
Yeah.
You're right.
And if you want to have equity between you and your partner, you have to take the time. So that the things that get in the way of women taking time for themselves is like, it's uncomfortable, right?
So
because you have to be
yourself. Yeah.
Right. But you have to be willing to be unavailable.
Yes.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable.
That is so hard.
There's a lot of guilt that comes along with that, which is really overcome, and anxiety. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny too, because, I'm just going to say it because I have to mention Brene Brown on literally every time there's a microphone. So here it is. Dr. Brene, guilt says in our head, we did something bad, and shame says we are bad.
Okay.
And I think a lot of this mom guilt is people feeling shame that they're a bad person because they're doing this thing.
Yeah.
But I just want to flip the switch on this exact thing. Do you want your child, especially your female child, to live the life that you have now? No changes after you Freaky Friday. Or do you want them to have something more?
Yeah, definitely.
Impactful.
Yeah.
Very impactful.
Right? And so it's like, here we are. So we have to be willing to be unavailable. That means you got to turn your phone off. You have to tell your family, we eat dinner 365 days a year. I don't care what y'all eat for dinner when I'm not here.
I can miss 1%, right?
Also, it's like, don't burn the house down. But if you guys have pizza and peanut butter or fast food, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I'm not here. And one of you that I love the most, remember we got married, you can handle this.
Yes.
And if there is some sort of emergency, you should call a first responder. Yes. I'm not a first responder. Yes. The second thing, right? So people have to burn guilt and shame. We just have to be like, I don't subscribe to that channel. I'm not a terrible person because I am modeling being a fully rounded grown-up.
Yes.
To the children that are in my life and to the other women in my life, including my mom and my aunts. And also we have to use our voices to advocate for ourselves, which is other grown-up who I live with. I have the best deal for you. You want to play poker every week with your buddies? Pick a day. And they'll be like, what? And you're like, I'm not going to complain how you're never home. I'm not going to complain that you're out late. I'm not going to bitch and moan about this, that, or the other thing. I'm just going to let you know, if you pick Tuesday, I'm picking Thursday.
Yep.
It is such a great tangible tip. Like, I love that. I'm going to take it right now.
And what partner would be like, no, right? I don't want you to have that time, because they realize they're like, oh, wow, I might already take the time. Because here's the thing, when left unexamined, a lot of spouses, you end up with this gendered hobby gap.
We talk about that a lot. Yeah.
Right. Because some dudes have very time consuming hobbies that usually coincide with becoming parents.
Interesting.
Like in the first year of a child's life is most likely when their dad is going to take up long distance running. Takes all day. Golf takes all day. Hunting takes all day. Whatever hobby takes all day or takes a weekend, they're like, oh, suddenly I have to do this because I want to be this role model for my kid. You're like,
wait, what?
No. Or what do? We say, you have all day Saturday, go for your long run. Because on Sunday, I'm going to go to my writer's conference where I'm going to work for 5 hours on my manuscript. I'm going to have a nice meal and I'm going to discuss writing and my phone's going to be off. And as long as y'all don't burn the house down on Sunday, we're good. Yeah. And if you burn the house down, still not a first responder, you should definitely call 911. And here's the thing. I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm in my 50s. And I have been through the first wave of people getting married and then getting divorced. Getting remarried. And y'all, we are now on the, a lot of people are getting divorced again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because here's the thing, especially for people who build their family with kids and they go, wow, we really can't afford childcare because it's non-existent and very expensive. So one of the spouses says, I'll hang with the kids until they're at XYZ age, right? And then the other spouse goes, awesome. You be the invisible architecture behind my life. You do everything. You raise those kids. You make sure we have groceries. You make sure you talk to my mom because she's crazy and you're good at it. You're better at it than I am. All the things, right? But here's what happens is this person is hanging out and like holding down the fort. And this person is excelling in their career and they're going to conferences and they're meeting new people and they're traveling. And then you get to a point where sometimes people go, oh, I fell in love with this other person. She's just so interesting because you're not doing anything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So taking this time for yourself can also kind of work as a divorce deterrent because you and your spouse are growing together. You might not be doing the same thing. God, if you don't like golf, don't take it up with them.
But
if
having
you
your
want
own
to go
interest.
hunting, but have your own interest.
Absolutely.
Be as interesting as you were when you started dating.
Yeah,
that's all.
Mean, you said it great in the beginning. It was like you married an interesting person. You want them to stay interesting. Why would you not want them to stay interesting?
Right. And they feel the same way about us.
Yeah. I never considered keeping myself interesting. Amazing.
It makes everything more fun when everyone's having fun.
I agree. Absolutely. Because I mean, when I feel like I was probably at my lowest of feeling like I don't know who I was, probably, and that probably occurred like right after like the first 2 years of like my youngest, right? Like I think that's when you kind of start to, as women start to kind of feel the shift of the baby not needing, right? Tell her not needing you as much. You're getting a little bit the gaps, not enough to be like, know exactly where to take action at, but you're just getting it enough that you can be like, okay, I'm starting to see me. I can look up and see me a little bit, but who is?
You're out of the baby fog.
Yeah, the fog is thinning.
The fog, or your I called it suicide watch because I was like, why are toddlers so dangerous?
Very, very.
Like if I take my eyes off of you, you could drown in the toilet, or you could start the house on fire. Like, but once you get a little bit away from that, or you have a few hours where they're in childcare or preschool, or the year everybody loves is the year that they go to full-time school.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, but guys, we had to figure this out before we are like, what do I do with myself now that I have this time?
Yes.
Right. So I also work with a lot of women who are coming at, they're looking down the barrel of retirement.
Okay.
Meaning that like 5, 10, 15 years. And you think, God, that's a long time. Well, let's all look at 5 years ago, what was happening. You're like, well, that was yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. The older you get, the faster it goes. Yeah. And so I always advocate for people, what are you going to do after you retire to live your best life? Don't wait until after you retire to figure that out.
Yes.
While you're being paid at your job, you're being a professional, you're probably at the top of your profession. Your kids are probably doing more things independently. Maybe you and your spouse are together, maybe you're not. But the thing is we're living longer. How are we gonna create a life that we're excited to have once we make these transitions?
Yeah.
Right? So there's so many transitions.
Yeah, that's
like
so
your
true.
kid, like becoming a parent, your kids going to school, all of the things. But we've got to be people.
Yes.
That's why I'm such a hobbies advocate.
Yeah, I love to hear that, because you're right. It really is just being a people. Like,
a person.
We're not asking to be anything extraordinary. We just want to feel like a person.
Well, to be like, oh, my interests matter.
Right.
Because not only in this idea of like trading time for hobbies with your partner, but also resources.
Yes.
Because I'm going to tell you what, the times I've heard moms talk about their hobbies being something like needlepoint, I'm like, well, that costs you $6.99 at the craft store. But your husband, did he get another boat?
Yeah. Or even golf is expensive.
Right? You're like, sir, you can only drive one boat at a time. What you do with 2 boats or the 4 jet skis?
So real.
But having those conversations around like, honey, I'm going to take my needlepoint to Palm Springs for a week.
Interesting.
Because resources are also needing to be equitable.
Yes.
And it's like, and if you don't want me to spend a week in Palm Springs with my $6.99 needlepoint, perhaps we don't need another speedboat.
Yeah. And that's something I think we almost self-impose on ourselves sometimes. Like, it's not even coming from our spouse. At least that's how we feel. It's like internalized, and because we're trying to be nice.
Be the responsible one. Be
responsible. Frugal,
or also, but let's not forget those other people in our lives who are quite expensive.
Very.
Right.
The children.
Yes.
So being conscientious of that, everybody.
I don't know what you guys do with your kids during the summer, but we don't have childcare in California during the summer. Like, parents are paying like week by week for summer camp.
Similar.
And they legit range from like $100, where that's just your kid gets like a juice box and they stand in the sun, and teenagers yell at them to whatever, but they're sweating and they're in the sun and they're at a park up to like $500 a week. I'm like, when was the last time I spent $500 a week for me?
That's a good point.
Very good point.
When I went to a conference.
There you go.
Because I can been guilty of paying several $100s for a week of camp, and that's a good perspective.
Right? It's like, what would we do if there was mom camp? And there are mom camps.
Really? I want to know about that.
There's mom camps. You can look it up. But also, like, I have run retreats for moms before, where I rent a big house on the California coast, and I'm like, come rent a room. We'll cook for you. We'll have programming. And the last one I did was so funny. Like, we had to close the windows because the ocean was too loud. I was like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you across the table. The ocean's too loud. And and it's funny because the people who were there, they were all moms. A lot of them had a big, like, a death, a diagnosis, or a divorce. Those are the 3 things that make people make change. But they came together, and there would be like a little group of people just quietly coloring at the table. There'd be another group of people out on the deck reading books, another group of people out on the deck taking photos, other people just legit curled up in their bed taking a nap. And I was like, mom camp.
Love that.
Yes. Right? I mean, the whole purpose of this conversation for me is to remind moms that we matter. Because here's the thing. Check out this analogy. How many kids do you each have?
2 each.
2 each. And then are you both married?
Yes.
So that means there's 4 people that live in your homes. Cool. So I am also married, and I only have 1 kid because I live in an expensive area. Let's be real. Kids are expensive. So I always use the analogy of a piece of furniture, either a table or a stool, depending on how many legs there are in your family. Each person is represented by a leg. So in your case, beautiful tables. Beautiful. They're made to be antique, made out of wood, hand carved, so great. And then you look at the mom leg, it's got like termites And it's the table that you're like, do I have to shove a napkin? How many coasters do I have to shove under this leg to make the table stop wobbling?
Yeah.
We all need to get out of our heads that we are not the equal part of the equation in our family. Because here's the thing, most of the time, if you take the mom peg out of the family, they all flail because we're doing so much. So shouldn't we want to take care of the leg that's holding this entire thing together? And so we are fed this idea of like, women have to be selfless. They're gonna put everybody else first. It's like, I can't give what I don't have.
Yeah, true. It's so true.
Yeah, 100%.
So, like, we have to take care of ourselves so that our family is well cared for. So our family is not wondering what's up with the wobbly leg on the table.
Yes, that's a great point.
It's a great analogy.
Really great point.
You are such an inspiring, interesting person. I love it.
I feel like listening that like actually
definitely.
Here. I've just been like, keep going, Tammy. Like I don't want you to stop.
This is like, okay, no, ask me questions. I'm sorry. Now I'm like, am I talking?
No, I feel like
you've hit on so many awesome topics. I think we've got a very good, we're all aligned on a lot of the same values. And so I don't have much more to add to it, honestly. Like you have said pretty much everything. I think we've covered pretty much everything we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So, thank you for everything. And you obviously have a plethora of hobbies and things you're interested in. You are, we could talk to you for hours. So
could talk to you for hours.
And I'm personally interested in one of your women's retreats or any sort of event like that you have coming up, because
absolutely
that would be right up our alley to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Is there anything you'd like to promote? I know you have a book and some other things you're doing. Anything you want to promote on our podcast?
Yes, I would. So first, everybody come over and you can find me at Tami Hackbarth on Instagram and on Threads. We connected on Threads, which is actually my favorite platform because you can actually talk to nice people.
Agreed.
But I do spend time on Instagram. You can also find me on my website at TamiHackbarth.com. I have my own podcast and it's called 100% Guilt-Free Self-Care. I have a book and it's called The Essential Guide to 100% Guilt-Free Self-Care. If you want to learn more about my programs where I mentioned deferred maintenance and fair play, we start in January. It's a year-long program where we do everything from making sure our doctor's appointments are taken care of, because every kid's doctor appointment's taken care of, but mom's like, oh, I forgot to go to the dentist this year. So we do body basics, all the way through civic engagement, as well as rebalancing domestic labor at home, talking about adult friendships, setting boundaries with our families, and this elusive unicorn space where we are focusing on being a whole person. And again, I have a book club through my program called Civics and Self-Care, because so many people feel like time and like their life is unmanageable because something is wrong with them. Y'all, I'm gonna tell you a secret. It's not a you problem. It's a systemic problem. We need to advocate for things like affordable quality childcare, paid family leave, healthcare, so that we have the social supports that we need in order to take time for ourselves and our families. And that's basically what I talk about. I talk about that and all my hobbies. I'm going to be real. If you come over and you follow me, be like, this woman reads a lot. I do. I interview a lot of authors on my podcast. And I would love to connect with everyone. And if you come over and follow me on Instagram, send me a message. Do not be shy. Let us be social on social media. Tell me what you're reading. Tell me what your hobby is. Tell me if you had the conversation with your partner about taking those 3 to 5 hours a week just for you as grownups. Because if people start doing that, I bet a lot more people will feel more satisfied in their lives, happier with their partners, happier in their roles as parents and professionals and partners.
Yeah, and I can vouch for encouraging people to reach out to you because I feel like you were very approachable on Threads, and I feel very conversational. So she's not threatening you guys. Like
no,
you literally
I would like to
reach
say
out to her, and she will communicate back with you.
Yeah, like I'm like, oh, I love being social on social media.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, we would have never met. We live half a country apart, but we do have this thing in common, which is we want to be interesting
and inspire people
and
to do the same.
Our community to do the same, right? Let's all see that change together.
Yes, cool.
We can get
and if you want to make sure that you are all up to date on everything, you can come over to my website, like I said, at tamihackbarth.com. I have a free class and it's called Reduce the Mental Load. So you can learn more about how you can invite your family into doing more stuff around the house in a friendly way.
Yes.
Because most of us, when we are mad at our family about we're doing too much, we're not that friendly and it doesn't go that great. So I have this little tiny course where I'm like, let me teach you how we can approach this so that other people can hear it. And that will put you on my newsletter list. And then you'll be the first to know about all the stuff that I have coming up. And I think I am going to do a retreat in 2025. We'll see how it goes, depending on interest too. So if you are interested in coming to California for a mom retreat, definitely get on the newsletter list.
Okay, we'll definitely stay connected, and it's been such a pleasure. So thank you for your time today and for joining us. Thank
you, Tami.
All right, bye.